Hello, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday. How's everybody feeling?
Very good. How are you?
Pretty good. We got a whole lot of stuff we want to get into this morning. We've got new info about the killing of Renee Good in Minneapolis. We have new ICE shootings in Portland. We don't have a lot of details, but already some of the government's narrative is kind of falling apart. So take a look at that one. JD Vance made new, in my opinion, vile comments. So lots to dig into there, but there's other important stories too. We just got jobs numbers out. We had a war powers resolution passed. We have a healthcare discharge petition that went through in the House. We've got protests in Iran. We've got Tony Dokoupil just continuing to be the absolute worst over at CBS. And we have two candidates in the show. So I recorded earlier this week a great interview with Melat Kiros, who's running against an incumbent in Denver. It's one of the youngest and one of the most progressive districts in the country. And she actually has a very interesting backstory. She's a lawyer who was fired for her pro-Palestine stance. So phenomenal candidate. Looking forward to sharing that interview with you. And also, we've got Claire Valdez, who is running in a seat in New York City, in the Commie Corridor, as it's called. So another very blue district, going to be a crowded primary, but she has just secured the endorsement of the one and only Zohran Mamdani. So kind of significant there, along with Shawn Fain, head of the UAW. So excited to get to speak with her. Ryan, have you met her before? I don't know her personally.
I haven't, but she's been an organizer with the UAW and specifically with Fain for years, and she's a state assemblywoman and backed Mamdani out of the gate. But I don't personally know her now.
Gotcha. Well, we will all get to meet her. So, and also I told you guys, I feel like I'm giving a little bit of Colonel Sanders this morning. It is what it is.
I love it.
Never know how these things are going to look before you sit down in front of a Zoom camera. All right. Let's get to the latest out of Minneapolis in particular. So CNN got their hands on some home security footage from the area that shows a different angle, and it proves pretty conclusively two things that are different from what the government has been saying. Number one, it shows the entirety of the time that Renee Good is there in her vehicle, and you can see that arrow there pointing at her vehicle. She is at no point blocking traffic. You could say she's partially obstructing the roadway, but vehicles are able to pass by. And then the other thing that you see quite conclusively here is that the ICE agent, who, by the way, has now been identified, actually a Iraq War veteran, and 10-year veteran. So he is not, one of these new trainees that just came in. In any case, he is not struck by the vehicle. There was another angle that we played on the show yesterday, and Sagar and I were both under the impression that he had been bumped by the vehicle in the initial moments. This particular angle shows pretty conclusively that is not the case.
And there's also footage here of the moments before. So there's a drop off from the car here, where the car pulls over to the side of the road and lets someone out of the car.
Presumably her wife, presumably.
Yeah, but we're not sure.
We don't really know for sure. Yeah.
We're not sure the identity.
But she has said, she's given other interviews or she was overheard by people saying, it's my fault because I'm the one that wanted to stop here so that I could get out and protest here or see what was going on. Like that.
Oh, I didn't see that.
That's what she had said. Like, so basically an ICE car drove off the road and it created this hullabaloo and some traffic, and they're coming back from dropping their kid off. And she's like, hold on, stop. I want to get out and, see what's going on. And I think she's more of a protester than the woman who was killed. And so, so she drops her off and she's kind of just waiting for her to come back. But then, she's waving people past, and then she gets these contradictory, orders from the police, and then gets shot and killed. So she was only there, 3 minutes or something? So because there was this
4 minutes, I think.
That's the other thing that this adds to this, because there was this kind of claim going out that she'd been blocking traffic for all day or something. But and there was a lot of missing kind of footage of the lead up to the killing.
Right.
So this clears that up. Two things.
One of the main
people were going by
eyewitnesses
the whole time. People are able to go by, and she was only there for a few minutes.
I was just going to quickly add, one of the main eyewitnesses who's favorable to Renee Good said that she was the lead car in the protest. Now, in that video, you don't see a car protest. So that's quite odd.
Right.
Because
It feels like whatever ICE car couldn't get out of the snow, like they were the lead obstacle. Like they're the
Right.
idiot.
I mean, I think at this point we have a pretty clear picture of what happened here. Renee Good and her wife dropped their kid off at school. This is their neighborhood. They live blocks away from where she was shot dead. As they come through the neighborhood, Renee's wife, who, as you indicate, Ryan, has said, I'm more of the activist here, saw this situation unfolding with ICE. And other people in the neighborhood said they heard the whistles and, people trying to alert their neighbors that ICE was coming through. She says, let's pull over. She gets out, and we know she was out of the car, and we can see in this film, she gets out of the car. She was recording things, I believe. And then, then ICE comes over, and Renee was sitting there, you can see her in the video trying to wave people through. And then ICE comes over. One of them aggressively reaches for her car, which, I mean, me personally, I'd be pretty freaked out by that because I've watched ICE beat a lot of people's asses for no good reason whatsoever. You see that. There's eyewitness testimony that says she's getting contradictory information. At one point before this happens, she says, I'm pulling out. So she's trying to exit. She's been told to stop, to get out, to go. She, tries to move. And that's when, this ICE agent in the front takes 3 shots at her in the face, and she ends up dead.
The ICE agent in front is not in the same group as the 2 ICE agents who come over to pull on the door.
Yes, that's right.
He is very, erroneously, when it comes to your training, walks in front of her vehicle. He actually
walks around the back side of her vehicle where she wouldn't even probably see him, and then comes around towards the front.
Right.
Now, again, one thing that is very significant here, because again, I thought from that sort of grainier footage that it did look like he may have been clipped by the vehicle. And that was what I think a lot of the self-defense narrative was kind of hanging on. This shows very clearly, and a New York Times analysis also shows very clearly, he was to the side of the car the whole time. Right. When he took the first shot, certainly when he took the second and third shot, he's parallel to her with his hand with the gun pointed directly at her face, basically through the car window. So, at this point, I think we have a pretty clear indication of what happened here. And, I think anyone who is reasonable, even if you think that a self-defense argument could hold up or that he has the immunity that J.D. Vance says he has, quote unquote, absolute immunity, which is a whole other can of worms that I think is utterly disgusting thing even to say. But in any case, even if you buy there's a self-defense, possibility here, there is just no denying that the way the government has portrayed this has been packed full of lies from the very beginning. We've been told there was a riot going on. We've been told the president of the United States said that the ICE officer was lucky that he still has his life and was in the hospital recovering. The Minneapolis State Police chief said, when I arrived on the scene, I asked if anyone else was hurt, and they said, no, just the woman. That's what they said. Okay. You can see he's not even hit. Nothing happens to this man. Okay. He's perfectly fine. So that comes from the president of the United States. And then the other thing that unfolded yesterday, more information that we got, is it doesn't look like Trump had even seen the video before he put out his nonsense statement. Because while a lot of this was unfolding, he was in a lengthy interview with the New York Times where he was asserting, he's lucky, left with his life. She tried to run him over. And they're like, have you actually seen the video? And his aide comes over, who he's rumored to be having an affair with, whatever, but we'll put that to the side. Anyway, his aide comes over and shows him the video, and he can no longer defend his version of events and just basically collapses to, well, the way I look at it, and this is a terrible thing. So, so that's where we are. And then the last thing that I just can't leave off the table, because one thing is this agent who shoots her dead, then he flees, he leaves the scene. Then the other people who are there, the other men that are there, they not only, as far as we can tell, apply no first aid to try to save her life, they block a physician who is there from coming over to try to save her life. And because their vehicles are still obstructing the roadway, when an ambulance arrives some 10 to 15 minutes later, the ambulance cannot get to her, and she gets carried out by her limbs like a sack of potatoes. So there was zero interest in trying to save the life of this woman that their fellow agent had just murdered. And we saw them doing a little like broing it up, congratulatory fist bumps in the street after all of this unfolded.
Yeah, Emily, I saw Crystal and Sagar talked about this for about an hour plus yesterday. But how is the right handling the second and third shots? Like, if you look at the angle of the first shot, he's at the corner of the car at that point. We'll get the autopsy. I would be surprised if that shot was fatal or even hit her, like, because it's down in the corner, the bottom right corner of the window.
My impression is that the first shot is the one that goes dead center through the glass.
Right. It's down at the corner of the windows. Maybe it hit her and killed her, maybe not. How is the right handling the fact that from the side, through the side window, he popped off 2 shots at her? As the car, at that point, that nobody is arguing that he's at any risk whatsoever. That is shooting to kill at that point. Like, how is anybody on the right, even if you set aside the first shot, justifying these second 2? Because I've seen a lot of lawyers who are like, I could argue for, if he was my client, I would do everything I could. I think I would lose, but I would do everything I could on this first shot, but I have nothing on the second and third.
I mean, I think what I've seen a lot of the argument be is, as soon as you have, and this is just, you guys disagree. I'm like, Sagar and I are probably on the same side on this, and we probably disagree with you guys on this. But as soon as you have a car backing up and accelerating, you get into lawful but awful territory where you are a law enforcement officer and make a split-second decision. I don't think it was the right decision, but I think it's a legally defensible split-second decision to go and try to stop the vehicle. Why you don't step out of the way, shoot the tires, honestly, I have no idea. But he has a split-second.
If you shoot the person in the car, as is evidence in the video, the car does not stop, which is why they're trained to not do this, even in a situation where you're legitimately fearing for your life, because the car is actually likely to accelerate in that instance, and you're creating danger for the other people who are around, because now this car is just careening with the dead person at the wheel. So, I mean, look, and this is not some new to the job guy. This is someone who's been in the job for 10 years. So you can't blame the poor training in this case, the 47-day lowered standards, whatever, which is something Sagar and I talked about, which is a problem, in terms of the overall ICE.
Maybe he uses Iraq war training there. That maybe training was the problem.
Did you guys see the report that he got dragged and legitimately hospitalized in June during one of these protests? Like, his arm was mutilated.
He punched out a back window because the guy wouldn't open his front door. So he punched out a back window, leaned his arm in to try to unlock the door, which I would be shocked if there's any training video where they're like, what you should do is smash out the back window and then reach your arm in through the broken window and try to unlock the door. Like, that is now, and then the guy hit the gas and dragged him. Like, that's awful. That's also
and he was prosecuted
predictable.
For that.
That's exactly what's going to happen. He's lucky he didn't sever an artery and lose his arm. But if he's too traumatized from that incident, he should not be on the street shooting women in
I agree with
SUVs
that.
with stuffies in the car, because he's now having flashbacks from the last decision that he made.
Not to mention, he's the one who positions himself in that place. I mean, I sort of look at, I'm not defending, the guy who dragged him was prosecuted, and I think, that went through the process. It's apparently appropriate prosecution. He was found guilty, whatever. I'm not defending him.
As he should have been,
But I think you can also look at the actions of this man and say, well, this is someone who acts recklessly and puts themselves in danger with regard to motor vehicles in a way that is, completely against any sort of training or protocol. And, just because he was in that instance, they found, okay, this guy did the wrong thing in a criminal way, doesn't mean that the situation here is analogous whatsoever.
One of the reasons that it's dangerous to shoot at a moving vehicle, obviously, is that it can be a deadly weapon. Like, cars really can cause significant damage. And that's why I don't know what the law enforcement training is. I wouldn't be surprised if it was to not step immediately in front of the vehicle. But more questions that I have is what the conversation is. Is he trying to prevent somebody from fleeing the scene of, I don't know, but fleeing the scene of a crime?
He was
is
just
he trying to
wandering around with
prevent
his
someone?
phone. He had his phone
But I
out
mean,
filming.
Was she being like, was there something that they were trying to prevent her from fleeing?
Well,
and this is, I think, one of the most.
But Emily, I think, sorry to cut you off, but I think
it's fine.
that we have that answer now because of that video that we just showed, because we have the entirety of her time on this street where what she does is pulls over, drops someone else, is waiting there. The street is not obstructed. She's waving people by. That's the entirety of what she did. So the narrative that she was part of a riot, that is something that I think Kristi Noem said. The narrative that she was trying to aggressively run over ICE agents who were pushing their trucks out of the street, out of the snow, complete fabrication. We have now seen the entirety of what she was up to there. And also, by the way, using deadly force to stop a fleeing suspect is also not legal. There are limited circumstances where that would be appropriate. And it would be if you know that the person just committed some, usually deadly crime, like they just murdered someone or it was armed robbery, whatever. In that case, and you have a legitimate fear that they may go on and be a risk to others, then deadly force is appropriate. Someone who was pulled over, like we're talking about at worst, a traffic infraction here is what we're talking about, that they wanted to keep her fleeing from. And I also am like, why did they want to pull her out of the car to begin with? I mean, so this is, Well,
I was going to say, I think one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle for me is, and this actually really could change things. If she is getting, as an eyewitness has said, contradictory instructions from the ICE officers, if one of them is telling her to get the fuck out of the car, which we hear, he is on the driver's side door. You can physically see him trying to open it. The door is locked. The window is down. And there's another officer saying, get the fuck out of here. Which is, again, an eyewitness says there's one person telling her to go. There's one person telling her to get out of the vehicle. I legitimately think that from the perspective of like Sagar and me who disagree with you guys, I do think that is a missing part of the puzzle that could completely change the story. And there is one eyewitness who says that's what is happening. So if you are listening to the one officer who tells you to go and you hit the gas and you don't see, I mean, you're still traveling probably like maximum 10 miles per hour, but probably closer to 5 miles per hour. But you don't see that someone has just come to the front of the vehicle because there's a guy on your side, but maybe you're hearing something from the other side. You can see how someone is like enormously confused in that moment and makes a split second decision. So I think that is like a missing piece of the puzzle. There's more information to come on that. I do think that's a possibility.
I put this up just because the question of like what they're trying to do came up. And this is actually leaked from a senior DHS official, which I think is just significant in and of itself that you have DHS officials leaking against this guy. ICE officers are trained to never approach a vehicle from the front and instead to approach in a tactical L 90-degree angle to prevent injury or crossfire. Officers are also instructed not to shoot at a moving vehicle and only to use force if there's an immediate risk of serious injury or death. ICE officers are also instructed firing at a vehicle will not make it stop moving in the direction of the officer, which, is what we were talking about before. So,
right. Use your time to get out of the way. Don't use your time to shoot at the driver. It's not going to stop the car.
Because the car's going to keep going towards you.
You could always shoot the tires, which I hear is a tactic or strategy to stop cars. But I think there's also another missing piece, which is now the claims, as sort of the facts are adding up from the Trump administration, is that she was part of a sinister left-wing movement. I saw a New York Post this morning. They called her a warrior of the left. So it seems like outside of the intricate facts that we're kind of debating here, there's this larger sense from the right that, well, the reason that she was killed was because she shouldn't have been there in the first place. That there is a permissive left-wing protest culture that puts the protesters themselves in danger. Am I sort of correct on that, Emily?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a narrative that's definitely emerged. And like the administration from Trump to others has not been, I mean, it's not like surprising or shocking to anybody. It has not been accurately reflecting the facts every step of the way. There's no question about that. But yeah, I think, and by the way, I do think people have put themselves protest-wise in dangerous situations. Like the Katabugazale video of getting in front of the car. I get wanting to protest ICE. I get wanting to block ICE, especially if you're opposed to these deportations. I understand that.
But
I do
that
think
case where,
that's dangerous.
In that case where Kat and other protesters are in front of the vehicle and the officer is revving and pushing the vehicle into them, would they have been justified in self-defense to shoot the officer?
To shoot the officer?
The officer...
Because he's in the vehicle.
They put themselves in front of the vehicle, just like the officer in this case put himself in front of this vehicle. The officer in that video is revving the car and pushing against the protesters, putting them at imminent risk of getting run over and killed.
Yeah.
Understand your ground laws. Should they be allowed to shoot and kill the officer?
I mean, I see what you're saying about that, but the difference is when you have an armed officer of the law telling you X, Y, and Z, you have to, I mean, there are like different legal things that come with the law enforcement. As much as I'm not like a
but
reflexive back the blue conservative.
You can arrest someone for not following orders, but you can't execute them.
No, you can't unless you think you're under deadly threat. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyone who thinks they're under deadly threat can shoot in self-defense. It's actually not
right-wing states,
any different. Yeah. And I mean,
well, if a law enforcement officer is giving you instructions and telling you to go do X, Y, and Z, then that is a legally different scenario.
I also think it's worth reminding that these are not cops. In fact, until this man was identified yesterday, actually, funny enough, because of details that Kristi Noem, J.D. Vance provided to the press. But in any case, until he was identified, we didn't even know what agency he was with because they don't wear badges. They don't even identify the agency they're with. Their faces are all masked up. So, I mean, it's also a very different dynamic than what. For what, again, for what reason are they pulling her out of the car to begin with, right? And, you know, whether or not she's getting conflicting orders, which, again, very common thing to occur with, with cops of any sort. So it would not be surprising if the eyewitness testimony there is correct, and we probably have enough audio, somebody will be able to analyze that. But as a woman, like, if someone is coming, masked thug, and I've seen videos of people getting their ass beat by these people. And this masked thug is coming up and aggressively pulling on my door to try to pull me out of my car. Yeah, that's going to freak me out. And that's one of the things that really bothers me about, some of the discourse here is there is so much expectation put on the untrained civilian who has just dropped her kid off at school.
Every mom is supposed to be John Wick now. Like, you have a 3-second Call of Duty tactical decision now if you are a mom at drop-off.
Right. And so she's supposed to act perfectly or else her execution is justified. And there's no, she's not trained for this. Meanwhile, these are people who we pay our tax dollars to, who've spent, this man 10 years in ICE, has, supposedly gone through whatever training he needs to go through. And there's no expectations of him. It's perfectly fine for him to get freaked out by, a suburban 37-year-old mom who just dropped her kid off and is in her, vehicle trying to get home. Like, it's fine for him to get freaked out and shoot her in the face, but it's not okay that she got freaked out by this incredibly scary situation that she's never been in before and try to leave.
Also want to real quickly share a Tucker Carlson observation that I actually thought was useful from his newsletter. He says, how come so few conservatives are viewing this story through a human lens, and why, when something similar like the killing of Charlie Kirk happens on the other side, did many on the left celebrate because they thought his political positions were wrong? We have a guess. Violence around the world is desensitizing Americans to violence at home. And I think that's worth sitting with. Like, watching unchecked violence
That's absolutely true.
unfold every day can only erode your psyche and your moral core.
This whole story could have been like from the West Bank, right? Ambulances blocked. No one was allowed to come help them. Shot, this could have been
dehumanization before and after the fact.
And the immediate statement from the government lying about it and defending it and calling them heroes.
And saying she's a domestic terrorist, by the way.
Like the whole thing.
Yeah. And
Can
we
we
have to move
play?
on. Oh, Crystal, do you have one last thing? I want to give
I
Emily the
just
last
do
word.
you? Yeah. Can we just play JD Vance?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Yeah, go ahead, because I think this is I
And
think this is
I think this is going
extremely
to hurt
important.
him too.
Yeah, he might have flown a little too close to the sun.
Yeah. Thanks for taking my question. So the head of Minnesota's investigations agency says that the U.S. Attorney's Office has essentially cut off the state investigations agency's access to the investigation. What is the precedent for that, and why shouldn't the Minnesota officials on the ground have access and work on this investigation?
First of all, I wish the state officials in Minnesota would investigate why you have so many people who are using their vehicles and other means to actually interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation. The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job. The idea that Tim Walz and a bunch of radicals in Minneapolis are going to go after and make this guy's life miserable because he was doing the job that he was asked to do is preposterous.
Absolute immunity. And noteworthy there, originally it had been announced this would be a joint investigation between local officials and the FBI. Now local officials have been blocked out, and the FBI has taken over. And you can guess how much confidence that literally anyone has in this FBI handling this in a straightforward and unbiased manner. Like, it's a cover-up. I mean, there's just no other way to interpret the decision for them to block out the local officials.
Yeah. And if I were the local officials, I'd collect as much evidence as I can, but I would wait until Trump is out of office to file my own charges. Because what they can do is they can remove it from a state level to a federal level and then pardon the guy. And then say, well, you can't prosecute him at the state level either because it's double jeopardy. But if they wait until he's out, even if he has a federal pardon, they can still prosecute him at the state level.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think it's very important to have an investigation into this that everybody feels comfortable with and can trust. And it's not bad to continue to get more and more video and audio from the scenes. I think even things that she may have been saying to the police to ICE, maybe a change to these things. I've gotten burned a million times by seeing videos quickly and jumping to conclusions. So I just think that's partially why it's good to have a full investigation that people feel confident in. And we're already not off to a great start when it comes to that.
So we'll leave it there. We also wanted to note that there has been another shooting in Portland that we'll be still getting more information about. We don't want to dwell too much on it right now. They shot
at a moving vehicle again.
But it was another vehicle related incident that we're still picking up some pieces of. Ryan, I don't know if you want to do like a TLDR real quick thing on it.
Real quickly. Their first statement. They pulled over a husband and wife, and then some chaos ensued. Without video, we can't take the Fed's word for anything. They initially said an officer fired one defensive shot, but even when they said that, we knew two people had been wounded. So that was a little bit suspicious. Eyewitness later told Oregon Press that roughly 5 shots were fired. A man was shot twice in his arm. A woman was shot in her chest. Local reports are that they are husband and wife. They got away from the Feds and then called 911 several miles away, went to the hospital. DHS is saying that they are illegally here from Venezuela and members of Tren de Aragua. Again, we're going to need some, how do they know that? What are their names? But again, they fired at a moving vehicle, which is against training. And so now you're seeing protests, breaking out around the country. Interesting. And coincidental, it's Minneapolis and Portland are two of the places that the right has wanted revenge against for the most for 2020, and so it's I guess not surprising that these are the places we're seeing the biggest kind of violent crackdown.
I would also say, Ryan, that it's also not a surprise that after the vice president of the United States comes out and justifies the killing of Renee Good, saying that the officer has absolute immunity, that others in the field hear that and take to heart what has already been abundantly clear, that they don't, laws, rules, nothing applies to them. They are it's not just the training, it's an intentional culture. Like, this is meant to be happening because they want this level of terror. I mean, that is the goal
Right.
of these
Right.
operations,
And
is
there's
to create a
reporting.
level of terror.
There's reporting that they're now looking at invoking the Insurrection Act in response to the protests that are emerging in response to the killings or the shootings.
Which is exactly what Stephen Miller has been excited
Right.
for this entire time. All right, so
well, let me just add
Yep,
one
go for it,
final
go for it.
point.
Yeah,
The
go
big
ahead, Em.
the big picture from my perspective is that you also have Minneapolis, sanctuary city. I think Portland's also a sanctuary city, which means statistically there are at least dozens of actual criminal migrants in those cities. And so that is the other, I mean, I think that is,
especially
even just like on the politics of it, that is, I think, another important thing.
Right,
that,
but the federal government is acting like they've never heard of how to do law enforcement before. Like, we have had criminals for thousands of years. We have evolved ways of enforcing laws against criminal behavior.
People in those cities are
just
blocking
wildly shooting into vehicles. Like, it is possible to do law enforcement without shooting into vehicles.
Agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree. I completely agree with that. I think, like, even if you're somebody who is not supportive of anything, like any deportations or whatever, most people don't want criminal non-citizens in the neighborhood. And I think part of the problem is that when you're tracking ICE every single place that it goes, that makes the legitimate effort, which most people support, like 90% of the country probably supports, of like getting at least 90%, getting actual criminals out. And I'm not saying that ICE isn't making that job much more difficult itself, but that is also a thing that exists as a problem that does need to be solved.
If that is, in fact, their goal, which is not what Stephen Miller has stated his goal is when he berated ICE agents and told them that they needed to stop doing criminal investigations and start harassing day laborers at Home Depot and 7-Eleven. But if that is, in fact, their goal, they are failing miserably at it. Barack Obama was much more effective at deporting criminals and, earned his reputation as the reporter in chief, which is not something that I support. But if you look at the increase in who is being held in immigration detention centers, all of that increase comes from non-criminals. So if that's the goal of getting the criminal illegals out, they are going about it in the worst possible and least effective way, with the largest budget anyone has ever had.
And I just wanted to say, I meant non.
We gotta move on, guys. Unless Ryan, you got one last thought before we move on.
The last point, I think polling is clear. They do want criminal, illegal people here illegally who are criminals. They want them deported. That's the polling. And so then Stephen Miller wants to use that and say, well, then you should allow us to just go to Home Depot and run roughshod and do everything that we're doing. It's like, well, no. That's not, the public does not support that. So now you're going up against the public. That's the point there.
So Ryan mentioned earlier seeing violence around the world and how it reflects back home. Congress is deciding to actually have a say a little bit now in that violence that we enact around the world. Emily, can you talk to us about this War Powers resolution that was just voted on?
Yeah, this is huge news, and this is a place that will, I think I'll agree. I'm reading from the ABC News report here, quote, in a rare rebuke to the Trump administration, the Senate on Thursday advanced a war powers resolution that would block the president's use of the U.S. armed forces to engage in hostilities within or against Venezuela unless authorized by Congress. A small group of Senate Republicans joined with all Democrats to narrowly advance the resolution by a vote of 52 to 47. It needed 51 votes to move forward. The Republicans who broke with Trump were Rand Paul, Lisa Murkowski, Todd Young, Susan Collins, and Josh Hawley. So Tim Kaine, who I literally just saw on my screen on CNN over on the TV, quote, pushed for the resolution to receive a vote immediately after Trump announced U.S. forces carried out that attack in Venezuela. I just want to pull up Josh Hawley's tweet here. I'm just going to read from it. He said, in response to, well, it wasn't directly in response to Trump. I mean, Trump predictably went off on these guys. Josh Hawley said, with regard to Venezuela, my read of the Constitution, and he is obviously who's the Attorney General of the state of Missouri. He says, my read of the Constitution is that if the president feels the need to put boots on the ground there in the future, Congress would need to vote on it. That's why I voted yes on this morning's Senate resolution. Now, he's taking a lot of flack for that, obviously, because most of the people who voted against the president were more moderates, not like people from the MAGA wing. And Rand Paul obviously is a libertarian. So Hawley, I think, there's an argument that's much more broad even than what Hawley's advancing, which is narrowly about boots on the ground. But that said, Ryan, you've covered Congress for years. This is, if this Venezuela op is what, because people are so angry about Trump, if that's what gets a serious momentum towards narrowing our insane war powers, that's incredible.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that it will in the end, but it is quite something that it passed so far. The context here, I was quickly feeding the cat while you started, so you may have mentioned this. They had brought this war powers resolution to the floor, or they were about to bring it, and the way that the White House defeated it was by flat out lying and saying, we are not intending to attack Venezuela. And in fact, we don't believe that we have a legal argument to do so if we did. So you don't need to put constraints around us. They had already built their, Caracas, mini Caracas in Kentucky, and were running drills on how to do the exact thing that they were telling Congress they had no intention of doing and no legal authority to do. So I think the combination of everything plus the lying was a bit too much for Congress.
And here's JD Vance responding about the war powers.
Technicality than any disagreement in policy. If you look at the people who actually voted, every single one of them have supported the administration's plan. Second of all, as the president, I believe himself has already said, every president, Democrat or Republican, believes the War Powers Act is fundamentally a fake and unconstitutional law. It's not going to change anything about how we conduct foreign policy over the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months. And that'll continue to be how we approach.
So sorry to burst your bubble, Emily, but it's fake.
Oh, shoot.
Which he voted for the war power. He voted for a Nigeria war powers resolution. And he voted for, I don't remember the other one. Was it Syria? Maybe it was Yemen. He voted for 2 war powers resolutions when he was in the United States Senate.
Yeah, he was good on war powers.
So why was he voting for fake war powers resolutions?
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, that sucks.
It's boring to point out that JD Vance isn't consistent day to day or week to week or year to year, but it's worth throwing one more on the Vance pile there.
Yeah, I mean, the spirit of the Constitution, Article 1 versus Article 2, is like pretty clear when it comes to war powers. Now, legally, you can be J.D. Vance and you could be a war powers scholar and work at West Point or whatever, and you can make these arguments about, just what the government can and can't do, especially post Vietnam, post Iraq. And it's just gotten extremely muddy. But those arguments, even if you can legally make them, they're wildly out of the spirit of the Constitution. And a lot of it comes from like just being able to do war in different ways than we could when the Constitution was written, that it's allowed bad actors to just smudge things over the course of decades. And I think, again, if you sit down and read Article 1 and Article 2, and then look at what's happening, you realize these things do not comport.
Yeah, and Trump... no.
I was just going to say the other thing is that they already, should have gone to Congress for what they've already done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like, they don't care about following our little rules and laws and constitutions. And in fact, Trump, in that interview with the New York Times, was asked, like, what are the constraints on you? What could hold you back? And he said, the only constraint is me and my head and my morality. So, like,
he literally said that. That is a direct quote.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure I didn't get the words exactly right, but I'm trying to quote him as precisely as I could. That is, by definition, like the mindset of a king. I mean, the No Kings protest, like, very vindicated here, because in his view, there is nothing to stop him. No Congress, no checks and balances, certainly no international law, no war powers resolution, no nothing. Nothing to stop him but what his own mind tells him is the line that he should draw. And, I don't think any of us probably feel very comfortable with where Donald Trump is going to draw the line on these things.
Crystal,
Yeah,
your
there it is.
paraphrase was almost verbatim. So this is the New York Times asking him what limits exist on his powers. Trump says, quote, "One thing, my own morality, my
thank
own
God.
mind. It's the only thing that can stop me." And you will remember him posting
That's fine.
this quote attributed to Napoleon over the summer where he said, "He who saves his country violates no law." This is a recurrent theme, obviously, of the second Trump administration.
This is, again, tired and cliche to say, but imagine if Barack Obama had said anything approaching
Absolutely.
this. Like, we would still be hearing about it to this day, right? I mean, it's fundamentally, it's un-American, it's authoritarian. I mean, I don't even have to tell you what it is. It's so obvious, it's on its face. So I appreciate that you have some Republicans who join in voting for this war powers resolution. I don't want to, it's very sort of like dark and nihilistic to feel like, well, it doesn't matter. But unfortunately, I don't think that it does. I mean, until we have genuine accountability for some of the people who have engaged in unlawful, unconstitutional, and criminal acts as part of this administration, there are going to be effectively very little checks. The only check is actually the public. Like, we have seen at times when there's been huge public pushback, there has been a bit of reining in of Trump, pulling back. But there's not a lot of instances of that. And, frankly, as he gets older and more unhinged and detached from reality, like, he's less able to even discern what the public wants, which also came out in recent comments when he was talking to the GOP conference. And he was like, you have to explain to me what's going on in the mind of the public because our policies are perfect, but they don't like it.
Yeah, he'd literally, again, another thing he actually said.
He said that. Well, on that note, we have a guest in the lobby that I'd like to let in here. Let's see if she is here. We have New York Assemblywoman Claire Valdez. Welcome to Breaking Points. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Claire, we know you are now running for the vacated seat of Nydia Velasquez in Brooklyn and Queens. Tell us a little bit more about why you're running.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am an assembly member representing parts of Queens that are well within New York 7. But before that, I was a member of UAW Local 2110. I come out of the labor movement at a moment when support for unions in this country has never been higher. We need a federal government that will actually support new organizing, that will take on corporate greed, and will fight for real social democracy. And New York 7 is a deeply working class district. Many renters, many tenants, artists, families, immigrants, and they deserve a representative who's going to go to DC to fight for them.
Right. And so today you rolled out endorsements from Mayor Mamdani and also from Shawn Fain, the head of the UAW, was elected and overthrew the old brass with your help. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from Texas to becoming part of the UAW? Like, what was that journey?
Yeah, so like many Americans, I worked, low-wage customer service jobs in many different places. I've been an independent contractor, have worked unpaid overtime, nights, weekends, the familiar story of a lot of working class people.
Which chains? I think people would probably love to know. Which different ones?
Would love to know. I worked at Trader Joe's. I worked at Pizza and Taco Bell, really grinding, bagging groceries, making food, working with customers. But and you got to pay the rent. You got to do what you have to do to make sure that you're making rent. So I worked those jobs. I moved to New York City to work at a small museum in Long Island City called Sculpture Center. And after working there for a few years, went to work at Columbia University, which was organized under the clerical workers were organized under UAW Local 2110 a couple decades ago. So it's an older union, 500 workers, mostly women, people of color, working class folks doing things from administration to call center work, cashiers in the cafeteria. And that was my first introduction to organized labor. As a worker, I spent so much of my time not knowing that I had the power to actually fight back against the boss and demand the wages and dignity that I deserved. But the union introduced me to that collective power.
And you joined the bargaining committee, is that right? Like, how did you become kind of more political inside the union?
Yeah, I remember my very first day on the job, being told by my boss that it was time for me to take a lunch break and having no idea what to do or where to go. And that was a gift, and that time off, a really simple thing that every worker deserves, was fought for by my union siblings. And so it took a couple of years for me to get more involved. In the meantime, I had joined New York City DSA. And when I joined the bargaining committee, it was because one of my coworkers asked me to. Very classic organizing tradition. You're asked to do a thing, you're not sure you can do it. You have the support of your coworkers and your colleagues, and you make that change.
Claire, I wanted to get your reaction to some significant news with regard to Mayor Mamdani's agenda, especially since he just earned his endorsement. So this report of the New York Times has big news from Governor Kathy Hochul on childcare. She's going to announce today she's committing to fully fund the first 2 years of Zohran Mamdani's implementation of free preschool for 2-year-olds. Some of the details are below. She says Governor Hochul stated the state investments will commit to delivering affordable childcare for nearly 100,000 more kids, make pre-K truly universal statewide, partner with New York City to launch the new mayor's signature 2Care program, finally realize the promise of universal 3K across access in New York City, support other counties in building out new child care pilots, expand child care subsidies to tens of thousands of additional families. And I think it's, I'd love for your reflection on the significance of this win and what it means about, how to do politics. Because when Zohran first started running, and even after, he wins the primary, and even after he wins the general election, I heard a lot of, yeah, but he's not going to be able to get any of this done. This is all pie in the sky. And Kathy Hochul was opposed to, significant parts of the agenda. And now she is playing ball and helping him deliver on, one of the more complicated and transformative parts of of the platform he ran on.
No, it's momentous news. It's an incredible victory. It's really, really exciting. It's going to transform the lives of so many of our families in New York City, and the ability just to be able to stay and grow a family here in one of the most expensive cities in the country. And this victory comes from organizing. Zohran ran a disciplined and thoughtful campaign. He talked to so many millions of New Yorkers. And by advancing a really economic populist agenda that actually touches working class people's lives, he was able to stitch together this really beautiful coalition. And so this victory is because of organizing. And it's something that Zohran's campaign showed us, that we can change the conversation around what working people deserve and advance a populist agenda that serves working people and makes our lives affordable. So it's so thrilled about the announcement. There's more work to be done to win the rest of Zohran's agenda. And that's the energy I want to take into Congress as well.
And what have you made of the Sia Weaver controversy this week? And where do you stand on the question of rent control and how private property should be viewed when you're also trying to bring down the cost of rent? I'll also tack onto that just the sort of racialized language that has been really part of that controversy. Do you think that was a distraction? Do you think that's a good way to think about property in New York City? What have you, as a New Yorker, what have you made of the conversation this week?
Sia Weaver is an incredible tenant organizer, and I am incredibly proud that she is going to be part of this administration fighting for tenants. She has a long track record of fighting against, bad landlords, corporate landlords, and making sure that people can stay in their homes. So I'm very excited to fight alongside her for those goals. Rent control and rent stabilization are the backbone of housing security in New York City. And we want to grow those protections and make sure that people can stay in their homes long term and build lives in the communities that they love.
Claire, how, as a local official, we've been covering this morning the killing of Renee Good in Minneapolis, shooting of 2 more individuals. We don't have a lot of details out of Portland, Oregon. The obviously New York City has been a major target for ICE operations as well. How do you think local officials should respond? And if you're to make it to Congress, which I think they've got a pretty good chance at doing, what sort of action should be taken at the federal level to garner accountability and rein in the lawless behavior that we've all witnessed?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a tragedy what happened to this young mother who I think was doing something that a lot of us have done in the past, months of this administration, standing by and witnessing her neighbors be kidnapped and displaced and disappeared from their homes and their communities. It's a tragedy, and my heart goes out to her family and her community. Yesterday, I was at a press conference with our state electeds to talk about state legislation that we've been fighting for since the Trump administration took office earlier last year, including expanding protections around sanctuary city protections across New York State, making sure that ICE agents aren't masked in New York State. But fundamentally, we run into the problem that so much of this is federal jurisdiction. And so at the federal level, the first step would be to abolish ICE. This is an agency now that has been funded many, many, many billions of dollars. And that money should be going to make our lives whole, toward making sure that we have healthcare and housing, that we have the protections that working people need to live dignified lives, not to militarize an agency that is now murdering citizens on U.S. streets in broad daylight and on camera. And of course, the ongoing tragedy of their kidnapping our neighbors, taking them to detention centers, sending them to prisons in countries that they've never even lived in. It's an atrocious agency, and it is long outlived its purpose, and it has to be abolished.
So, Antonio Reynoso is the Brooklyn borough president, as you know, has kind of a WFP Democrat and progressive in general, is also running for the seat. Where would you say the biggest daylight is between you and Reynoso?
Yeah, we're going to be hashing this out during the Democratic primary. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to shape the direction of the Democratic Party. This race is not going to be it's a deep blue district. It's one of the most left districts in the country, if not the most left district in the country. Voted for Zohran Mamdani by 40 points. And so this race isn't going to be about whether we're flipping a seat. This isn't where the majority is going to be fought for. This is where we're going to decide what that majority is going to fight for. I come into this race as a labor organizer with the experience of defending my colleagues and coworkers in arbitrations, in fighting against the boss and demanding a seat at the table. That's the experience I bring, along with my experience in the movement that just helped elect Zohran Mamdani to be our Democratic Socialist mayor of New York City. And so I'm looking forward to the campaign and talk to as many voters as possible. We've got a really exciting platform that we're putting together around unions for all, healthcare for all, and Medicare for all.
And Reynoso doesn't seem to have been terribly outspoken when it comes to Gaza. Is that a place where you think there's daylight between the two of you?
Also, I'm very proud of my record on standing up against the genocide in Gaza. I was among the first electeds in New York City to call for a ceasefire. In the early days, we were marching, phone banking, rallying, doing jail support, and naming it as a genocide. And so I have a consistent record on this issue, and it's one that I hope to bring to voters.
Claire, where do you stand on whether, if Democrats take control of the House, whether Hakeem Jeffries would have your vote as Speaker?
Yeah, I'm one campaign at a time. So what I'm really hoping for is that in the coming year, we are actually able to take back the House and be in a position to even elect the Speaker. What I will say is that, we just had this momentous election in New York City. We elected Zohran Mamdani, whose campaign centered working class people and an economic populist agenda. And he confounded expectations and really shook the Democratic Party establishment. And I think that's the energy that people are going to be hungry for in 2026. And hopefully we will take back the House and be in a position to have more conversations about who the leadership should be.
What are some of your top priorities? Now, I used to live in Crown Heights. I'm currently in LA, but what are some of your current priorities to improve Brooklyn and Queens? Zohran was really articulate about having some really tangible, things that you could probably just list off in your sleep now, fast and free buses and stuff like that. What do you want to do to impact specifically Brooklyn and Queens?
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about housing earlier, but 77% of this district are renters. Overwhelming percentage of people have to pay for their housing every single month. A lot of them are NYCHA tenants, so they live in public housing. NYCHA has been underfunded and gutted for generations now. So fully funding NYCHA to make sure those residents have the dignified and beautiful homes they deserve, building more public housing so even more New York City residents can enjoy that benefit. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez carries a piece of legislation called the Homes Act around social housing. So building social housing that's decommodified, that's permanently affordable, and that as many people as possible can live in. That's one of the biggest issues we're going to be fighting for. But of course, Medicare for all is top of mind for so many of my neighbors. As long as private health insurance is able to dictate whether or not you're able to live a long and healthy life, there won't be real justice in any of our communities. And I think we all have a story about a medical emergency that could have meant us losing our homes. So making sure that everyone has health care, everyone has housing, and everyone has the opportunity to join a union. My union completely changed my life. So passing the PRO Act, talking about a federal jobs guarantee. We have a lot of labor legislation that we're working on and thinking about to make sure that everyone has a dignified life, but a seat at the table too. So that, because I really believe that so much power rests in working people, and that's the power that we have to foregrab in these fights.
Last question is just a quick yes or no. Do you support Senator Sanders' pause on data center construction, as I think AI is going to be increasingly front and center, especially in terms of labor issues?
Yes, absolutely. I think this technology is moving at breakneck speed, and I think a pause will help us figure out how to respond to the way that's being developed and find ways for the power that AI represents to be with workers and not with tech oligarchs.
All right, Claire, we'll tell people where they can follow you, where they can support you.
Yeah, absolutely. So go to my website, clairevaldezforcongress.com. We're rolling out that campaign now. There'll be lots of opportunities to volunteer. Of course, donations always welcome to, and follow me at Claire for New York.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It's wonderful to meet you, and we wish you the best of luck. And, the endorsements you're getting, I think, are a huge deal for your campaign. So we're excited to see that.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to have the endorsements and honored to speak with you all today. We'll be in touch.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us, Claire.
Take care, all.
Bye-bye. All right. Where do we go next, folks?
Let's touch on the jobs numbers
Sure.
quick, because we now have a full year picture here. So jobs added, this is from December, was 50,000, which is less than expectations, pretty low number overall. It means that for the entirety of the year of 2025, it was the worst job creation that we've seen since the COVID, since 2020. So the COVID recession. We also are probably going to get a Supreme Court decision on tariffs today. So pretty significant day in terms of economics. And I saw one reporter, I can't remember who it was that was tweeting this, but if it wasn't effectively for like healthcare and maybe one other service sector, maybe hospitality, you would have had net job loss on the year. So, the stated goals of the Trump administration has been, we're going to surge all these like blue collar, all these sort of like tough, masculine, manly man jobs for our man folk. And in fact, the economy has shifted even more. We're losing blue collar jobs. We're losing manufacturing jobs. And what we're gaining are, in professions that are typically dominated by women.
The other thing I wanted to highlight is a Washington Post report. It's not letting me share it on the screen right now. I'll send it to you, Griffin. But this is from yesterday about how more people are relying on part-time jobs, or people who are or people are relying on multiple jobs. So those two things. So part-time jobs up, and people working multiple jobs up. And that's another part, I think, of the economy that will be politically for Republicans in 2026. That's just an indicator that there's dissatisfaction with the job picture overall. And I think that's obviously an important reflection of how happy people are with the opportunities available right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the key thing there, just to underline it once again, is the lack of hiring. Like we're in this weird situation where there aren't a lot of there are layoffs, but the layoffs are not happening at the cataclysmic rate of like the great financial crisis. The cataclysm is slowly unfolding in the sense that when somebody leaves a job, they're not opening up what they call a new rec. Like they're doing everything they can and pushing. All managers are being pushed to figure out, how can we do this job? How can we automate it? And how can we just push more work onto the existing numbers of people, which over the next couple of years, because of the way that attrition works and people revolve in and out of jobs, that's going to be where millions of jobs end up being lost. It's like anybody that's looking for a job can vouch that it's very, very hard to find one, even though we're not in a place where people are getting laid off at like an epic scale. That showed up again in these numbers.
I was going to say, here's some spin. This is EJ Antoni, who I think he was briefly nominated to head up BLS. He says full-time jobs exploded in December with the hottest print of 25, rising 890,000, while part-time jobs fell 740,000. Great to see people moving from part-time to full-time work in such large numbers, even though this positive shift doesn't appear in headlines job numbers. Well, one of the reasons it's not going to appear in headlines job numbers is because the share of workers with multiple jobs, this is according to the Post analysis, is at a 25-year high. A 25-year high. Part of that is obviously because of the gig economy, and some of that is actually good for certain people, but you're also looking at a rising share of people being pushed into part-time work according to the Post analysis. And so when you have the rapid acceleration of artificial intelligence, and you have like record numbers of unemployment among college graduates in the spring, they're hoping that their tax cut bill picks up and it gets their traction, and there's lots of hiring that comes from that, new manufacturing jobs that comes from that. A gamble when you're also having AI start taking up, obviously, a lot of those entry-level jobs of particularly recent college graduates.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just underscoring the points both of you guys are making. The New York Times, I think, got their hands on these leaked memos from, they were able to get their hands on these memos, internal memos from Amazon about the way that they were planning on shifting work from humans to robots. And Amazon has been sort of leading the charge at the bleeding edge of automation for years at this point. And yeah, the idea is not, we're going to do this mass firing. It's they intentionally work their people in their warehouses, which is where the bulk of their workforce is. They work them to the bone until they just crash out, and they intentionally do not promote them. I mean, this is all reported out and documented in the past. And at a certain point, your body just can't take it. And so, yeah, the idea is we're just going to churn through these human beings and not replace them with other humans, but replace them with robots. And, over a fairly short amount of time, they're planning on replacing something like 500,000 workers with automation. They've already have a pilot warehouse down somewhere in the South, I want to say Louisiana, where there's very minimal human involvement. So they already sort of have a prototype with this, and they're already trying to figure out how to message to the public what is going to be happening here. Amazon, of course, being one of the largest employers in the entire economy and a real trendsetter, both certainly in terms of logistics, distribution, warehouse work, but really in terms of the economy at large. So if that's the way they're thinking about it, you can guarantee that's the way that businesses across industries are thinking about how they're going to replace these pesky human beings with much easier and lower maintenance robots as that technology comes to fruition.
Yep.
That silence means that we all approve and are happy with the state of affairs.
It means that Crystal is brilliant, and we are all so
speechless.
You're marveling. We have nothing to add. We couldn't possibly.
Yeah. It's bad out here, guys, in LA, because the entertainment industry is dying. And the entertainment industry, if that's not going, well, that also feeds all the restaurants, all the other businesses in LA. So everyone is hurting really bad out here in a way that I've really never seen before. Restaurants are closing down because no one's making enough TV shows or movies. So those crew people don't have money to go out. and it's a circular kind of death loop happening in Los Angeles right now.
Well, everyone, we need some data centers in LA.
Yes.
There you
Dozens of
go.
jobs. Dozens.
That's the only
Build it on
dozens
top of
jobs.
Paramount.
I have a little local anecdote just to add to that. As you guys know, I just adopted another kitty. We have Socks has joined our family. I'll tell the whole story another time. But in any case, when I was at the shelter, the woman who was there, the volunteer who was there, she said, "We've never had more surrendered animals in our history." And I said, "Oh, well, why?" And she's, "They can't afford it. They can't afford it, and people can't afford to get their pets spayed or neutered, even though, there are services you can figure out to get that done for free. But if you're just showing up at the vet, it's going to cost. So they're having more puppies and kittens, and then they can't afford the ones that they have. And then they all end up at the shelter." And she said it's a higher number than she has ever seen. So, again, just a little local indicator. But, it's certainly indicative of something real that's going on.
And that's a private equity story too, because during the pandemic and afterwards, private equity took over a massive amount of the veterinary industry. I think it's almost like 80% now of vets and clinics are not run by the mom and pop places they used to, but private equity that now was ratcheting up the prices. And I as someone who volunteers at shelters and stuff, the number one stories are either that apartments don't allow animals anymore, like they're cracking down on that, or just cost.
Wow.
Ryan, I wanted to throw to you next because we have some protests occurring in Iran. Now, I want to put these up on screen, and I wanted to get your sense of how meaningful this is, because I was slightly skeptical of some of this simply because Zionists have been mainly pushing this online, and some of the worst kind of liars and fraudsters are very happy about it, which always gives me kind of a moment to like pause and maybe just try to be a little more skeptical. I'll put these up while you talk.
Yeah, so Ayatollah Khomeini spoke today publicly, lashed out at Trump throughout his speech. He said, he brought up the fact that Trump killed more than 1,000 Iranians during the 12-day war. He quoted Trump saying, "I gave the order I commanded during the war." And then he contrasted that with Trump saying, the nation of Iran. The Ayatollah is a kind of a character if people haven't followed his like public pronouncements. So he adds, "A handful of inexperienced, inattentive, and unthinking people believe it, accept it, and act according to his desires." So what the Ayatollah is saying there is that he's blaming Trump for like instigating the protests. Now, there's been criticism of the coverage of these protests, or there's been criticism of the president distinguishing between, quote, rioters and protesters. It's very interesting because it's coming from it's like a mirror image of what we have in the United States, because the right, or at least the kind of anti-Iran government segment of the population here, loves to debate this idea of who's a rioter and who's a protester. But the difference between what's going on in Iran and what happens, here in the United States when people were getting upset that the protests weren't being called riots, is that there was a lot of property damage done in 2020, for instance. In Iran, you've seen a significant number of cops and other security service people killed in these protests. There's a video circulating just today of a cop, and I think in Isfahan, I'm not exactly sure where, just getting absolutely pummeled to death by demonstrators. And so you watch some of that stuff, and you're like, wow, this is like that's beyond mostly peaceful protesting. Now, the question of whether the Iran government is going to go down, I don't know. Everybody, every time this kicks off, people are like, oh, the regime's going to fall. It's like, what? It's like, what would it be replaced by? Like, even Trump has said that the Shah's kid just is not up to the task. And so if
I'm
not,
forming a team. It's Maria Corina Machado and Pahlavi.
so
Yes,
like the
Agent
Iranian
Fury.
government is
Let's throw Chalabi in there.
the Iranian government is a massive thing. Like it's not one tin pot dictator. Like you could kill the Ayatollah. I met with a group of reporters, met with the Iranian president in New York when he was here for the UN, and he said at the time that after the 12-day war, they put in place a succession plan that went like 12 people deep. So, like, can they kill him? Sure. Can they kill the next layer underneath him and the next layer under that? But how you go from there to like installing an American puppet in Iran, that I don't quite see.
And then Ryan, what do you make of this clip from Trump yesterday, who says, and he's been saying this a bunch, that if Iran kills protesters, we're going to hit them very hard.
Of that awful 47-year tyranny.
Well, I don't want to say it, but I will tell you they're not doing well. As you know, probably better than anybody. They're doing very poorly. And I have let them know that if they start killing people, which they tend to do during their riots, they have lots of riots. If they do it, we're going to hit them very hard.
And so again, like the mirror image, like trying to think about what's going on there and through the lens of how we understand things going on here. Like here, if a cop is at the side of a vehicle and pumps bullets into a side window and kills a protest, not even a protester, but a woman in Minnesota, like that's okay.
Iran, bomb away.
Protesters in Iran can kill significant numbers of police officers. So it's very hard for Trump to square it. Like, why shouldn't he be going after ICE? Like, why are American security forces allowed to kill protesters and non-protesters, but protesters in Iran are allowed to kill security forces? And if protesters are killed, then he's going to bomb Iran. So there's not a whole lot of consistency going on there.
Shocking development.
Yeah.
We're all really surprised by that.
It is.
When I talk to, go ahead, Em.
Well, I was just going to say, it is always very hard to know when you're on the cusp of genuine, because we go through this cycle
when it happens,
constantly.
It happens like out of nowhere and quickly.
Well, and the people who are saying it, Griffin started by saying he was skeptical of people who are promoting this, but that's obviously a thing that happens. You have people who are either paid or working for nonprofits where their ideological goal is regime change, and for better or worse, that is what they want. And so they hype up the narrative to make it seem like Iran is on the cusp of falling, and that makes it more and more likely for intervention. So it is, and sometimes these protests are genuine, and that they're real organic uprisings, but it's just always so hard to know what's real and what's propaganda.
It's very hard to tell from afar, too. Like, how big are they? Just like how conservatives in America will convince you that every American city is like an absolute hellhole war zone by like picking out certain clips. It's just very hard to know if you're not there and you're not on the ground. When I talked to Dr. Parsi yesterday, he was making the point that you are, Emily, which is that regardless of whether the regime is actually on the brink of collapse, which he's highly, highly skeptical of, to say the least, this is very much helping make the case to Trump that it will be quick and easy for him to, take consequential action and
make Iran great again, as Lindsey Graham said with his hat.
Exactly. And Trump signed that hat. So not only does Dr. Parsi think that Trump greenlit Israel bombing Iran, but he feels that this time, in contrast to last time around, that he thinks the U.S. will actually take the initial step, will sort of lead the way versus how it was done last time, where Israel started, bombing them and then we came in afterwards. So I think, between the fact that you still will always have Israel and their allies in the government and Mira Madelson and the whole Israel lobby pushing for more bombing of Iran and regime change in Iran, you always have that dynamic going on. Then you also have Trump feeling very, I guess, confident in his military abilities. He feels like this was a mission accomplished moment in Venezuela. He feels great and like this was super easy and a big political win for him. So that pushes in the direction of, hey, let's do more military stuff. And then when you add to that the the visuals of the protest and whatever the reality of the protest are, that also gives him more of a sense of like, oh yeah, we could totally get in and, and do this and make something happen. Now, what that something is, given that he's ruled out the Shah's fail son here, I think that is a bigger a question for me. But, a lot of things are pushing in the direction of more direct action in Iran, whether that's imminent, whether it's later on. I don't know. I think Greenland is also very much, front of mind and on the table here for all of this. And if you're looking for something that's really just quick and easy, Greenland is the obvious target. Because as who was it, Stephen Miller, who I think said on CNN, like, no one's going to fight us for that. It's true. Europeans aren't going to do shit about it. So if you just want another quick and dirty victory, like Greenland is the easy place to look for that.
And they're now apparently offering, they're debating whether or not to offer the people of Greenland $100,000 each for the U.S.
Sagar wanted to give them $2 million each.
$2 million each?
Genuinely, how do you think Americans are going to feel about it? Like
not great.
Right? Like, does that not occur to anyone? Like, we're going to rebuild Venezuela's infrastructure, make Venezuela great again, give oil companies a bunch of guarantees. By the way, there's a whole long list of oil executives meeting with the administration and with Trump today. And we're going to do a universal basic income for Greenland? Like, what are we talking about here? And I mean,
like 2 years
of
salary for the average American.
Right. Yeah. Can I move to Greenland and get that?
Right. And pick up that bonus. I mean, yeah, there might be an arbitrage opportunity here. And so, like, the other thing that's silly about Greenland is sort of like an echo of the Venezuela thing. Like, Maduro was totally willing to sell us oil and for us not to have to own Venezuela and run Venezuela. That was all on the table, like all the minerals, the resources, whatever they want for their data center, all that stuff that was on the table. Same thing with Greenland. Like, if we want more military in Greenland, we can put more military in Greenland. We already have insane level of rights that we probably shouldn't have to do what we want in Greenland. Like, you want their natural resources? Cool. I'm sure they would sell them to you. But there's also this element of some weird like Peter Thiel connection here where they want to set up one of their weird ass crypto cities or something and have looked at Greenland for that. So that may be part of what's going on here. In any case, that's kind of where things stand right now.
One more point on Iran is just when Mossadegh was overthrown and the Shah was restored, that did not end well. That is why we are where we are right now.
Yeah.
So these, like, it actually applies to Venezuela as well, that you could feel like if you're a Lindsey Graham, you got this win, and then you will frame it as a long-term win, when in fact it's like a short-term win that has, under the surface, caused all kinds of different problems that will be tensions that ramp up slowly over the course of years or even a decade plus. And it's cyclical. It's not solving like some larger problem of making Iran totally friendly to U.S. interests in the long term. In fact, in the long term, it can make that much more difficult because people care about their own sovereignty, and Iranians remember what happened in these regime change efforts more than Americans do. It weighs heavily on their minds. So these things that are pitched as long-term solutions are often, even by the people who are pitching them, short-term, by their terms, short-term solutions that have counterproductive long-term ramifications.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see us in this odd transitionary time where we still are parroting the language of human rights and insisting that places like Iran follow international law and human rights. Yeah. While we're transitioning to a country that does not even like pretend to do that ourselves, and that glorifies in like this, as Vance said, this officer should be celebrated, that should be thanked for killing this woman.
Yeah, I think it's worth putting those two pieces together, Ryan, because you have ICE now, the largest law enforcement agency in history. It has a budget that is larger than all but I think 13 countries, militaries, including like military like Canada, like significant sized countries. And you have Trump asking for $1.5 trillion defense budget. Yeah. So effectively, all of the taxpayer resources are being funneled into security and police apparatus. And I think that tells you everything about the direction they're taking things in, both
Yeah.
domestically and abroad.
And which is wild because we're not that like restless of a country. Like we're not that hard to control. Like we're just watching football on Sundays, like to going to church and like putting our kids in schools. Like we don't have separatist movements and guerrilla movements and.
But
like,
I think they
crime is not that high. It's like,
I think they believe what they're saying about AI and how, I mean, if you throw, in short period of time, a third of the country out of a job, then, we may not be so, they're not
Docile.
sure we're going to continue to be so docile.
Right.
And, for good reason. I don't think the Netflix and the Sunday football is going to placate people forever if you've got
college
and the
football
weed.
Saturdays, regular NFL Sundays, NFL Thursday. Now you got NFL like Friday and Saturday. Like,
and you can bet on all of them.
NBA pretty much any day of the week. So
You can bet on them
okay to
for
the
extra
masses.
fun. You can bet on the length of the White House press conferences.
Yes.
An actual
We'll be busy
thing that
betting.
happened this week.
Well, there's certainly, if they're trying to, keep the public placated and docile, they're making a big mistake by trying to crack down on drugs. So just put that out there. Tactical misstep there. But no, I mean, I just to be serious about it, like I think in my mind, like all of these tech oligarchs who are effectively running the administration and picked the vice president, they believe that they are trying to rip up the social contract. That is what they say. They believe they are going to be displacing, in their words, all of human labor. These are not stupid. In a certain sense, they are stupid people. But in technical IQ, intellectual sense, they are not stupid people. They have studied history. They know what that could mean. So
They know what they're doing.
Yeah. I don't think it's an accident then that you end up with this massive federal government operated at the pleasure of the president, private Gestapo police force, which is what ICE is. I know it's supposed to be centered around immigration. I think we can all see that it goes far beyond that, who enjoys, according to the vice president, absolute immunity. And we're going to kick up the military budget to $1.5 trillion, which also is not just about abroad. I mean, we have military deployed into American streets. We've had that regularly under the Trump administration, and they're thinking of invoking the Insurrection Act. So put it together, and I think we can all see pretty clearly where they think that things are heading.
Well, Elon Musk just posted a couple of weeks ago that we're all going to have universal high income. And it's like they know they're fundamentally re-engineering the way society works, our relationship to labor, our relationship to each other. They don't know. I mean, this is the point about if they're smart or not. Like, they don't know what's actually going to happen, but they know that in a macro sense, that's what they're doing.
That's their goal. Yeah. Their goal is to rip up the social contract. That's what they want. Again, panel goes quiet after Crystal drops.
Stunned.
Panel stunned into silence after Crystal drops truth bomb.
Me and Crystal recently read a book separately about by Aaron Bastani. We didn't read it together, but it was about Aaron Bastani called Fully Automated Luxury Communism, which kind of argues that there might be a path forward where this is a good thing, that we turn into a post-scarcity, post-work era. And to a certain extent, that this AI technology we're experiencing is akin to an industrial revolution, and that the technology is going to be here and exist and shape it. And it's sort of up to us to decide on a policy level if that's going to lead to a more equitable world or a barbaric fascist world.
Yeah. This is, our friend Yegor Kotkin, our Russian socialist friend. He's trying to get me there in my thinking of like, stop being a doomer and take them up on the offer to rewrite the social contract. And that may be the best possible play on the table is like, okay, you guys want to rewrite the social contract? Cool. Here's our demands. That might be.
We're going to have the numbers. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I have been trying to reorient my thinking in that direction because, I think we can do some things to slow things down. I think that's essential while the democratic process catches up. If like they are not going to stop going. There are too many trillions of dollars on the line at this point. I think it would be very, near impossible to actually stop the development of AI further in this direction. So in any case, yeah, these are. So the book is excellent, though. I mean, just to get people thinking bigger about what might be possible.
And less doomery, I think, which might be important in this time, to have an optimistic view of the future that inspires people.
Mm-hmm. Which is what the left is supposed to be about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say a little political point. Ron DeSantis has been railing against AI and big tech recently, which is, from the conservative perspective, sort of an obvious way to draw daylight between yourself and J.D. Vance or any kind of Trump administration candidate that would be running in 2028. So that has been fascinating to see.
Well, we're going to need someone to lead us into this brave new world. And who better than CBS's new evening anchor, Tony Dokoupil?
Yes.
Ryan,
the man for the moment.
You've been on a warpath, Ryan. I want to start with you, but first, for the audience, if you haven't been tracking or watching CBS nightly like I have, there's been a little bit of a rocky start with some of Tony's clips here, and they're really making him the face of the network. Now, there's been a few different moments here. This was on his opening night here, where we had a little teleprompter flaw.
That base of power and influence could be out too. All right, to other news, as you just heard from Jill. Well, to other news now, to Governor Walz. No, we're going to do Mark Kelly. First day, big problems here. What are we going to Kelly here, or are we going to go to Jonah Kaplan? We're doing Mark Kelly, possibly demoted from his...
All right. You know what? This is why we don't do a show live. You know, I feel like we've been in a similar situation. There was a moment also where he went to his hometown of Miami and cried because he said it made him very emotional. That one's a little too long to play. But I think
it's too embarrassing to play.
It's too embarrassing to play.
It's terrible. It's too uncomfortable.
I think the quintessential clip here that kind of also shows Barry Weiss's influence and sort of what the new CBS is going to look like is this clip from Tony about Marco Rubio that I just have to play in full here.
And only in America, the many lives and many jobs of Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants and a former Florida senator. He's now the face of U.S. foreign policy and President Trump's point man on Venezuela, all in addition to his roles as Secretary of State, interim national security advisor, and acting national archivist and USAID chief. Whatever you think of his politics, you got to admit it's an impressive resume. And now AI memes have added to that portfolio, casting Secretary Rubio as the new governor of Minnesota.
He killed the meme.
He killed it. Prime Minister of Greenland, the new manager of Manchester United, the head of Hilton Hotels, and highest of high honors of all, the new Michelin man. Now, back in real life, of course, these memes may not add up to much, but for Rubio's hometown fans, which are many around here in Miami, it is a sign of how Florida, once an American punchline, has become a leader on the world stage. Marco Rubio, we salute you. You're the ultimate Florida man.
Marco Rubio, we salute you.
What do you say? What had become a punchline? America?
Florida
had become a punchline, but
Florida
now it's
man
not.
was a punchline.
It's not
Because of
anymore.
Marco
Not according
Rubio.
to Tony Dokoupil.
Marco
Not
Rubio
according
has
to Tony
elevated
I mean,
Florida.
the entire thing was a punchline. What a self-refuting piece of propaganda.
I like that. That's Ryan's problem with it, is the logical inconsistency.
Right, yeah.
It's like, wait a second.
Still a punchline. Yeah, even worse of a punchline. Even more embarrassing. Even less dignity to it.
I never found this meme amusing even before Tony Dokoupil killed it, because I'm like, you know, the picture of Rubio makes it look like he's miserable to like be in charge of Venezuela now, but he fucking loves this shit.
Right.
Like, that's the part about it. I was like, it's not funny to me because it doesn't poke fun at reality. It like invents some totally different dynamic that doesn't exist. Putting that aside,
Right.
The obvious point here is that this is some of the most humiliating state propaganda. They have outdone Fox News now. I genuinely think that is the case. And it has to be that. Like, it can't be subtle because Trump does not appreciate subtlety. So it has to be the news equivalent of the cabinet meetings where all of the secretaries
Yes.
take turns going, oh my God. sir, you are the most incredible, better than Abe Lincoln, better than George Washington. It is an honor to be in your presence. It has to be the news equivalent of that for them to get what they're after, which is like, Trump's blessing for whatever deals the Ellisons want to do.
Yeah, CBS Newsmax.
What's the Anderson Cooper piece? Like, she's also sitting on an Anderson Cooper piece.
About South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So Anderson Cooper did a piece starting back in November, December, whatever, or it was screened in November, December, about the South African refugees from the white genocide unfolding there. And because it's going to be factual, it's going to be an embarrassing piece for the administration. And so the reporting is that Barry White, she tried to get Anderson Cooper to be the Tony Dokoupil, but Anderson Cooper was like, no, that would be an embarrassing move.
You take the red pill or the Dokoupil.
He went to CBS Newsmax and then red pill or Dokoupil. He's on fire.
Yeah, and so now Barry Weiss, the reporting is heavily intervening in edits to his piece on these refugees from the South African genocide, and there's no indication that it actually will ever air, that she made an anomalous amount of suggestions. I'd love to see her notes. Like, that would be that.
I actually would, because to be honest, I'm all for marking up Anderson Cooper scripts.
Yeah, and I'd love to see the notes.
What are these notes?
What are we missing about the South African story that Barry Weiss thinks is important to get in?
Can I play one more piece from Tony Dokoupil? This is just from yesterday. So this is the latest hotness of him. His deep reflections on, the killing of Renee Good and what it all means. And people are pointing out on Twitter that this sounds like some word salad bullshit that like Kamala Harris would put together. And so go ahead and let's take a listen to this one.
There is so much to say about the last 24 hours, but sometimes what matters most is what is yet to be said at all. We all still need to hear. By now, we've all seen the videos. Renee Good is alive in those videos, behind the wheel of her SUV, her 3 children expecting mom home again soon. And we've seen the freeze frames, too. We've heard the political warfare, the clashing declarations about what happened. And unfortunately, we know the ending for Renee Good. Nothing is going to change that. Yet what we have not yet heard is one another. I spoke to people today who haven't slept since it happened, who want ICE out now, who don't like masked men on their streets, don't want their neighbors arrested, don't want families ripped apart. I've heard, too, not on the streets protesting, but in passionate notes in my inbox from people who want to see our immigration laws enforced legally and peacefully and with safety for all,
you don't read
including
your inbox?
the officers who in many cases are also parents themselves. These are both deeply American sentiments. But our job now is maybe the most American thing of all. It's to find a way to live with people who are genuinely different from us, to try to be fair to them, and in doing so, to make things better and keep things decent. Because in America, no one else is going to do it for us. It's not my job to tell you what to think about what happened here yesterday, but I can tell you we owe our children a nation that is better than the one we live in today. And I can say that because we all know it's true.
Deep thoughts with Tony.
Literally, what the fuck is that? That's
The problem he's going to have is that that won't satisfy the right. His interview with Tom Homan is instructive of the same phenomenon, which he got Tom Homan to say that the investigation should play out. And he pointed out to Tom Homan, well, that's not what the DHS secretary is saying. That's not what the president is saying. The president is, they're saying she was a domestic terrorist and he is a hero. Like, they're not waiting for the investigation to play out. And Tom Homan's like, well, I'm not going to, I think the investigation should play out. You ask them about their views. So he got Tom Homan to be the voice of reason, which is that's a good for him, remarkable feat of journalism. But that is going to infuriate the Trump administration. So you can do, 99 out of 100 pieces of propaganda, and then it's going to be the one or the two where you do real journalism that undermines it all. And then you got to ratchet up the propaganda and get to 11, or he's going to threaten your merger again. So that's why he's in such a difficult bind, because you can't deviate.
I just disagree that their goal is to please the administration. I think their goal is to please their billionaire class, and that there is a distinction.
But the
sometimes
billionaire
with
class
that.
wants
They
a
like the
merger that the
administration.
administration
Yeah,
has
Has
to
to
approve.
greenlight.
but this is like we see like when there's daylight between the administration and the billionaire class is where there will be daylight between like these CBS centrist like mushy middle types, and then the administration, some of the billionaires that back the administration. Like that's where it's such a stupid strategy to try and revitalize monocultural mass media, but to do it from the sentiment of elites. Like, first of all, technologically, there's no such thing as mass media. There's no such thing as monoculture anymore. It is absolutely dead. It makes no sense to try to revive it. In tone, in content, it's not possible. Secondly, to think that these people, because they're anti-woke, like that Barry Weiss can come in, someone who agrees with the average American more on like the question of quote wokeness, is the person who is going to run the whole news network in a way that makes sense and resonates. I mean, it's just a disaster. It's just the dumb. It's a strategy so stupid only billionaires can come up with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kirsten, got anything to say left?
I was just looking for did you guys
for
see
more
his
clips?
January? Yeah, there's one other one. That's the January 6th
Did you see him
coverage.
I didn't have such an issue with the J6 one, but the one where he's crying
What?
about Miami.
Oh my
Did you see
God.
that one?
Oh God, it was so bad. I mean, it's just like
Nobody
that
cares.
one. No, nobody cares. Number one. Number two, like, I don't know.
So
it's
mean,
so
Emily.
like it's so narcissistic. I mean, it really feels like part of this sort of neoliberal ideology where it's like everyone is just a tool for your own self-aggrandizement and development.
Yes.
So like the
Yes.
fact that I got this job is like deeply meaningful in some way that you should
To the
care about.
country.
Mhm.
Right. And I'm like,
And
no, we don't care. Like we think you suck. We don't
And
to the
it
extent that
also
we know who
shows-
you are,
yeah.
we don't like you.
It also shows how deeply in his soul he believes that he won that position through merit
Yes.
rather than DEI for the guy who Barry Weiss was pleased to see attack Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, right?
Like that,
Yeah.
like that's
And
why you
basically
got
like accuse him of being low-key a terrorist.
like
That
you
was
got,
what won
you got
him
the job
job.
for calling TNC a terrorist, and because Anderson Cooper and the other people who were more qualified understood the assignment and rejected it. Like that's why you got the job. So you just completely misunderstand that clearly. Like you think you got it because you earned it.
Okay,
I
found
think
the
that's
January 6th
wrong.
clip.
Well, before
What do you-
Christopher
go
do
ahead,
that,
Griffin, what do you
I'm
think?
just rebutting Ryan's point. It's actually
Yeah.
because he wrote an article called "My Adult Circumcision: How I Made the Cut for My New Religion" by Tony
didn't
Dokoupil,
hurt.
April
Yeah,
10th.
I mean, well, it probably hurt, but
2014.
it didn't hurt
It
his
did
chance.
What is that
It hurt bad.
picture?
I'm not sure. It's a hot. It looks like a churro.
Churro?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
That's an
That is
interesting
bad.
at a
Churro
churro.
hot dog?
I
That's
hope
not
A
an
that's an
visual
ad.
choice there.
Did you guys
I
know he's
hope
married to
for
Katie
that.
Tur? He's married to
Yeah.
Katie Tur.
Who is a fish head, so we will broke no criticism of Katie Tur.
All right.
I
Except
found
for
the
her
I found the
husband. Play
Jan
it.
6 clip. I found the Jan 6 clip. Let me just
Play it,
this.
and then we gotta go on to
Emily
something
and I
else.
can fight about it. Go ahead.
Also tonight, 5 years after the January 6th attack, a group of pardoned defendants marched through Washington. President Trump today accused Democrats of failing to prevent the attack on the Capitol, while House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries accused the president of, quote, whitewashing it.
That's it. That's the whole thing. So Trump
Emily?
says this completely factually bullshit thing, while Democrats say this
You got
accurate
both
thing about
sides.
the pardoned defendants. Like, come on. But to Ryan's point, you're right that this isn't enough. Like, what Trump would want them to do is be like, they were wrongfully convicted, these innocent, peaceful tourists who also, to the extent that any of them did anything bad, they were Antifa and they were righteous patriots because the election was stolen. Like, that's what he wants to hear. He doesn't want both sides is not enough.
I mean, yeah, I definitely agree. Both sides. It's not going to be enough for the administration. Yeah, but he called it an attack, which already in and of itself would be a problem for Trump. And then
Exactly.
it is like that is an accurate representation of what Republicans accuse Democrats of doing, is not having provided ample security. I actually think there's some evidence. I think part of that is legitimate, that there were opportunities for Pelosi to send in more reinforcements. Now, nobody was anticipating what actually happened at the Capitol. And that was a intelligence community mistake. Even though they had informants fucking everywhere, they had social media surveillance, and still somehow anyway.
Your job is not to repeat the press releases of partisan actors. Your job is to provide factual information.
The factual information that I thought the 15-second snippet was providing was, here's how both parties marked the 5th anniversary of January 6th.
Very lame.
I think it was both sides.
Very lame.
It definitely was.
Ryan,
I think both sides' stuff is lame.
Well, to Ryan's point, when people just look at Tony, they feel like there's a level of he didn't get there by his own merit. A lot of people just get this feeling of, why am I watching this guy? Why do I care what this guy has to say? Which is what people feel about me on this show. So I salute you, Tony.
Not true, Griffin.
You are
Tony,
a trailblazer.
Fan favorite.
We salute you, and I'm so proud of you representing people like me. I feel seen, and keep doing the work that you're doing, Tone.
Representation.
Representation matters. Crystal, we have another incredible interview with another incredible candidate in Colorado. Would you like to tee it up for us before we throw to it?
Yeah, of course. So I interviewed earlier this week Melat Kiros, who is a fantastic candidate against a Democratic incumbent in Denver, Colorado. And, I mentioned before, she was fired from her law firm for actually standing up for other lawyers and young associates who were coming in and were getting fired for their pro-Palestinian advocacy. So in any case, she's taken this as an opportunity to, become more engaged in the political process and have the kind of representation that she wants to see. The district she's running to represent, she's backed by Justice Democrats. They think they're very careful with their resources. They think she has a good shot to win this Democratic primary. And part of why is because this is one of the most bluest districts in the country. We obviously interviewed another aspirant for a different, very deep blue district in the country. It's also one of the youngest districts in the country, and obviously in terms of the politics of Palestine, that makes a big difference. So enjoyed my conversation with her, and I think you guys will as well. Very excited to speak today with Melat Kiros, who is a Democrat challenging a Democratic incumbent in a Colorado district. She's backed by the Justice Democrats. Let's take a look at a little bit of her campaign launch.
Hey, over here. Come here. These are Congresswoman DeGette's financial disclosures. Take a look at this. Big pharma, fossil fuels, defense contractors, and yes, even a notorious member of Epstein's inner circle. I'm Melat Kiros. This is Denver, and I'm running for Congress because it's time for a change. Members of Congress, even Democrats who say they vote the right way, are beholden to the same billionaires who keep our prices high, burn our planet, and profit from a genocide. The good news is that we can change that, and it starts by changing who we send to Congress. We can't afford another 30 years of complacency. We need to fight. When I spoke out against the genocide in Gaza, powerful lawyers told me to stay silent or it would cost me my job. I didn't back down, and I'm going to do the same in Congress. You'll always know where I stand. Medicare for all, housing first, an arms embargo. The era of any Democrat will do is over. It's time for a fighter. Today, we're announcing our campaign is endorsed by Justice Democrats. They're joining the thousands of grassroots supporters fueling our fight. We already have more donors than to get, and I'm not taking a dime from AIPAC or any corporate PACs.
And Melat joins us now. Welcome. Great to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, of course. So you lay out quite a bit there in your campaign launch video about why you're running. But what was the final push that led you to jump into this race?
Ultimately, it was Donald Trump winning the election again and witnessing the failure of Democrats to actually acknowledge and understand why working class people were upset with the lack of deliverance by the federal government and not actually understanding that the affordability crisis was massive for them and to actually address that problem and really gaslight the American people into believing that everything was fine. And that's how we ended up with another Trump administration. And we need Democrats that actually acknowledge the problems and offer the solutions that are going to make a meaningful difference.
So you referenced this in that video, but you've been outspoken against the genocide in Gaza. You lost your job for it. Just tell people what you said, what you did, and what the personal consequence has been.
Ultimately, I was talking about law students that were losing their job offers because they were protesting the genocide that was happening in Gaza. I spoke out against their firing. I spoke in favor of freedom of speech and also that there was a genocide happening in Gaza and to use this geopolitical situation, these human rights crimes to silence dissent against this genocide was absolutely ridiculous. And so that's what I said, and I got fired after I refused to take it down. And immediately after, I was getting messages from other attorneys who wished they could have spoken out, saying the same things against the genocide, but they couldn't risk losing their health insurance. They couldn't risk losing their job because their partner just lost their job. And I realized very quickly that this is a coercive market. It's not a free market. And when our employers can use our jobs and our health insurance to crush dissent against the government and its actions for using our tax dollars to fund a genocide. Something was deeply wrong with our system. And the only way to really address it was to get to the root cause of this, which I believe is the money in politics issue.
I mean, is that legal to fire you for exercising your First Amendment rights?
At will employment at the end of the day. It's not a decision that I agreed with, of course, but when we are talking about a genocide that is being waged by Democrats who are taking money from the very folks that want this to continue to happen, it makes it incredibly difficult for employees to challenge these decisions in the workplace. And so whether it was at will employment at the end of the day. And so it's something I disagreed with, but ultimately it put me back on the path of actually fighting for everyday working people and getting back to public service and fighting for the kind of policies that would make a meaningful difference for folks.
So you're running to represent a Denver district, so it's relatively blue district. All the action's going to be in the Democratic primary. You're going against a Democratic incumbent, Diana DeGette. Tell us a little bit about her and how you contrast with her.
Diana DeGette has been in office since 1997. She's been in office longer than I've been alive. And while I have a great deal of respect for the work she might have done in the past, for the last 10 or so years, there's been nothing. It has been nothing but lukewarm leadership. And we are literally staring down multiple crises with our economy, with our democracy, with the climate. We cannot afford another 30 years of just complacency. In all that time she's been in office, she has only passed 2 bills, and she's taken millions of dollars from corporate PACs, including big pharma, big energy, defense contractors. So it's no wonder that we are continuing to see Democrats enable this kind of behavior in the federal government, whether or not it's a Democrat or a Republican in charge, because it is these corporations that are truly influencing these parties. And it has to change by ensuring that we no longer vote in corporate shills into government and are actually making sure it's the people that are holding the politicians accountable.
I see you've taken very strong and admirable stance against Trump's illegal actions in Venezuela. You posted this. You said Trump just invaded a foreign country, kidnapped their leader, put all their oil up for sale at the direction of his billionaire backers, and all establishment Democrats have to say is he didn't ask for permission first. Distracting from the Epstein files is just his bonus. I'd love for you to elaborate on that, but also has Diana DeGette, has she said anything? What has been her position on Venezuela?
The exact same response that a lot of establishment Democrats have had, which is that they didn't ask for Congress's permission first. And ultimately, that is ignoring the very real reality for a lot of Americans that have witnessed this already happen again. They know that this is not about drugs. We know that this is about oil and money and power. And for the Venezuelans who are rejoicing the removal of Maduro, I can understand where they're coming from. But ultimately, there has never been a case the United States government invading a foreign country and overthrowing that government and leaving the country better off than when we first arrived. Because it's never about bettering that country. It's about extracting all the resources to feed the insatiable greed of corporations and billionaires here, while everyday working Americans are just left out to dry. And that continues because there are establishment Democrats like Diana DeGette who take money from the defense contractors and the big energy companies that are going to be benefiting from deals like this to allow it to continue while they feign outrage by basically just saying that they didn't ask for permission first. The American people do not want to go to war with Venezuela. They know that this is just a regime war change. This is not about drugs. And we deserve better from Democrats to actually fight forcefully against this war.
I saw your governor, Jared Polis, put out an absolutely horrific statement saying that now is the time to celebrate the ouster of Maduro. And, I mean, I don't even feel like doing the throat clearing at this point ever. I think the American people see very clearly the way that these regime change actions go. And to your point, that it doesn't end up benefiting the people who are harmed the most are the people that they're pretending to help at this point. What did you make of his statement, and where does this come from?
I mean, ultimately, we are talking about a governor that is himself extremely wealthy, is largely in the same kind of conversations with the same oil executive. And it's not surprising in the least bit, right? And ultimately, this is coming from a place where Trump had closed door meetings with these oil executives, asked for their support in the campaign, the millions of dollars that they donated. And this is just Trump, meeting his end of the bargain. And so when we're talking about Democrats who are participating in this style of politics, which is ultimately just bribery by these corporations and these billionaires, this is what ends up happening. It's working class people that get left behind while they just feed their insatiable greed.
Would you vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be Speaker of the House if you win and if Democrats can take control of Congress, which is, fairly expected at this point?
I refuse to vote for anyone to be Speaker of the House that is continuing to take AIPAC money and to continuing to aid and abet the genocide that is happening in Gaza. If there's a change of heart by that time, then I might reconsider. But ultimately, this has to be about standing on principle and choosing the American people first and choosing human rights first. And right now, Hakeem Jeffries is not meeting that moment.
Melat, are there any specific sort of Denver or Colorado issues, just to give people, a sense of anything that may be unique to your race and to the constituents you're looking to serve?
Yeah, the first district in Denver is one of the youngest, if not the youngest district in the entire country.
Oh,
It's one
wow.
of the bluest districts in the country. This is an incredibly progressive city. We have things like universal pre-K. We have term limits. We even have the small donor matching program that helped propel Zohran Mamdani to a win in New York City. And so we are talking about a city that deserves to have a representative that actually reflects those values in Congress. We have very strong anti-corruption values here. And to have a representative who has taken millions of dollars from the very corporations that are responsible for the affordability crisis that are pushing out young people from this city, it's absolutely absurd. And to have been in office for 30 years, to have been at the helm of power while the affordability crisis has unfolded, and to claim that you are the only one who can help get us out of this mess is absolutely ridiculous. And it insults the intelligence of Denverites who are seeing the affordability crisis, who are trying to not just get by and make ends meet, but to actually thrive and to build some kind of generational wealth, which is impossible under these circumstances. And when you have been in office for that long, you have lost touch with what the needs are of the people in this district, and to be in office for 30 years. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And so Denverites are very excited about the prospect of there being a real challenge in this race, and to see that there's someone who's actually talking about the affordability crisis and offering solutions that would make a meaningful difference. So Medicare for all, housing first, universal childcare, an arms embargo, right? We are talking about having an elected official that actually listens to the 80% of Democratic voters that wants an arms embargo in Israel. It's absurd that we even have to talk about it that way, but that's where we're at when it's money and corporations and billionaires that are actually directing and influencing our government. The only way to get rid of that kind of system is to vote all of the corporate shills out.
Well, Melat, I think there are going to be a lot of very interesting things that happen in politics this year. I think there are going to be a lot of Democratic incumbents who are caught a bit unawares. If people want to support your campaign, where can they do that?
You can join us at kirosforco.com. That's KIROSFORCO.com. You can sign up to volunteer. You can donate. A small dollar donation on a recurring basis is massively helpful to candidates like myself who do not take corporate PAC money, who do not take lobbying money. I don't take a dime from APAC. This is a people-powered campaign, and I'm really, really proud to share that we have 2,000 more individual donors than the incumbent does. This is a campaign that the people are excited about, and I hope that you will join us, whether it's virtually, on the ground here in Denver. We're going to start knocking on doors and canvassing all over the city very soon, so I hope to have folks join us.
Amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time with us. I know you're super busy, and also thank you so much for running. I really appreciate it as someone who ran for Congress unsuccessfully myself. Hopefully you do a little bit better than I ended up doing, but I know what a personal cost is. I know what it requires of you. So I really appreciate you stepping up for this.
Thank you, Crystal. That really means a lot. Ultimately, we are talking about our generation facing down the barrel of a future where we own nothing, rent everything, and work until we die. We have no choice but to step up and fight for the kind of future that we really believe in. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, that was Melat Kiros in Colorado. Now, folks, we are releasing this entire Friday show episode publicly for free near the start of the year, showing you guys what we do here in the second half of the show. We want to just end here with some rapid fire, quick AMA questions because this episode has run a little bit longer than normal.
That's amazing, by the way, because I thought we were behind the paywall for like the last hour, so a little.
I've just been letting it fly.
Sorry to warn you. All right. So this person, Mr. Christopher, asks, what did Ryan mean when he said something like borders are immoral?
That just the right to move about from one place to another is just fundamental to human nature. And I think Americans have a hard time conceiving of that because they have that right. Like, if you were born in Pennsylvania and could never leave Pennsylvania, I think you would quite easily agree with the sentiment. When you drive from Pennsylvania to Maryland and just drive across the border, that feels natural. You could still have nationalities, citizenship, and such. You can enforce laws. But that's what I mean. That not being able to move is inconsistent with human dignity and flourishing. I remember when I was down in Bolivia touring a military base there in the Chapari region. This guard who was with us, waiting with Christian Parenti, actually. We're waiting to interview a colonel or something. And he asked us, he's like, how come you guys get to wander around a Bolivian military base and I can't even go as a tourist to the United States? And Christian said it's called imperialismo. But there's no moral way to answer that question. That's what I mean by that.
All right, we'll move on. We'll keep them fast without any opening up any debates among the hosts here. This next one from Amberlyn FNP. Have any of you guys ever voted for a member of the opposite party? If so, why?
Yeah. I mean, I don't consider myself a Republican, certainly, but I've definitely voted Democrat in DC elections. Lesser two evils.
I voted for Wayne Gilchrist, a Republican for Congress. I think as many times as I could. He represented the Eastern Shore. He was a high school teacher at Kent County High School. He is an awesome guy. I know his kids. Anti-war for the most part. Environmentalist. He would definitely be a liberal Democrat at this point. And then he was ousted by Andy Harris, right-wing lunatic Republican, in a Tea Party challenge. So yes, I also voted for a Republican state house member because Eastern Shore is very conservative and had one of these blue dog Democrat vibes going into the 90s or whatever. And there was this one Democrat who was this far right-wing Democrat who was very powerful in blocking everything. So my logic was, be better to have a powerless Republican in that seat
Mm,
than a powerful bad Democrat.
interesting. So you
And
voted against
that
like
actually helped me get
your
the
version
marijuana.
of Joe Manchin.
That helped me get the marijuana policy job, because in the interview they asked me if I would be willing to support either, candidates in both parties as long as they're good on weed. And I told that story, and they were like, "Oh my God, we actually opposed him because he was bottling up our pot bills in Annapolis. You're dead right. Like, that guy sucked, and getting him out was great." I was like, "Yeah, who cares? It's not about party. It's about getting things done for people."
Crystal, have you ever voted for a Republican?
Never voted for a Republican. Hard to imagine at this point that I ever would, unless the party completely and dramatically changes, or I was in a district, like if I lived in Thomas Massey's district and it's going to be a Republican, like I would make sure to vote in the I would probably vote affirmatively for Thomas Massey, because I do think it's important to have this iconoclastic Republican voice in Congress, and that would be more beneficial than having like, a random like sort of shitty Democrat, which would be the only thing that would have, that would be likely to emerge in that district in Kentucky.
Are you in Tom Perriello's district? Is the one where he's running?
No, I'm not. I'm in the district. What's the name of the guy? They were very involved in the whole Ukraine situation.
Vindman.
My brain. Vindman,
That's
yes.
right.
Yes.
That's the district I'm in. Yeah. Although they may be redrawing the lines, because I'm kind of right between that and one of the still Republican districts that's represented by the guy that I lost to back in 2010, Rob Whitman, who sucks.
Yes.
He was just sort of like
House
run-of-the-mill
staffer.
Republican sucks. What's
Yeah,
that?
he was like a Hill staffer, right? Who like
He was he was an environmental scientist, actually, which is part of what's
interesting.
disgusting is like he completely abandoned any, of his previous principles with regard to conservation and environmentalism, and just votes a party line and like is completely unremarkable in every way, which is just pathetic.
Last question from Patrick Mulligan here. He says, Nick Shirley is a disgusting propagandist, and I'm glad to see BP take apart his lies. Did you see his Ukraine quote unquote coverage? Also, why has BP not talked about Hassan's propaganda pieces and lies? Now, I love this comic. It's like, oh, we got a guy who's mad at everyone.
Hassan's China streams were fucking wild.
Oh yeah, Emily, what do you think? What do you think about Hassan's China streams? Go off.
Well, I mean, it's different than Nick Shirley. Like, Nick Shirley will go to, like, CCOT and not act like he's, a simp. Whereas Hassan was in China and was like, yeah, I simp for China. China's awesome. Which I thought was, like, completely insane and, like, self-evidently insane as it was happening. And they were
Nick Shirley simps for CCOT. Nick
no, but I'm
Shirley
saying he's not honest about it. No, I'm saying he's not. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's not out there being like, where Hassan was like, yo, I simp for China, like China rocks. And Nick Shirley's out there like, I'm telling you the facts from CCOT. Here's what's happening. Like, I am the Rick Steves of fascist tourism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we feel that there's propaganda on both sides. Was that what we're saying?
Well, I mean, I think with Hassan, you're allowed to offer your opinion of what you think of China. Like, I don't know. It's different than going to and like demanding to see these kids in a daycare and fabricating some whole fictional storyline that's just totally bullshit. And I mean, there is fraud. Nick Shirley did not find said fraud. So in any case, I would put them as two distinct things. I would not dump them in the same bucket.
Right. And it's just interesting that this is happening as Trump is pardoning all of these fraudsters who have
whose administration is committing like freaking Caroline Leavitt ended her press briefing apparently to like pay off some poly market bet is what it looks like.
Allegedly.
Is what it looks like. Yeah. And there was certainly an insider trader on on the Venezuela kidnapping.
White House did not respond to my request for comment.
No. The Ponzi scheme guy that he pardoned defrauded thousands of people. Like, these were not small crimes, and these are crimes with real victims, rather than like the taxpayer getting bilked, which is not good. But like, these guys are stealing.
We're talking about like cops and firefighters who had their whole retirement robbed from them, and now we'll never see a penny of it because the president of the United States is cool with fraudsters as long as they like donate to him or suck up to him.
Yeah.
Nick, you have your next target. I'm I'm launching. Release the Shirley. Yeah, Shirley also is getting rewarded, and he's like, now I'm going to every daycare around the country. And so look forward to, I guess, like every daycare has to submit their children to him, or you're just going to get like just an influx of Kick and Rumble streamers like knocking on your door every day after. And I think that's going to happen with bathrooms too, with like trans people in bathrooms. I think like the next thing is going to be just going inside bathrooms with a camera is going to be the next socially right-wing content creation thing that's going to be allowed now.
That sounds great.
So
did you see Nick Shirley like wandering around a medical plaza? Like, why are all these healthcare places in the same place? Like,
there's not a Foot Locker to be seen. This is so weird. Your buddy Hanania had a really funny post. I had missed that Shirley walked into a healthcare provider's office, sees a bunch of patients in the waiting room, walks up to the receptionist and asks her what the healthcare rates are.
I have never seen someone in more need of medical care than Nick Shirley.
Is he is he an alien? Like, do you not live here? Like,
he's a Mormon. He's a virgin.
I feel like that's something. Okay, it's funny you said Mormon, because I was just gonna say it feels like something Mitt Romney would have done in his campaign.
Yes.
Remember how he was doing? It's like
hot
weird
dog is my
tour
favorite
around
meat.
the American. Yeah, it was like he was on safari in his own country. That's what that feels like to me. So there is the Mormon connection there, I guess.
On Tuesdays, we have a 2-for-1 on casts.
Excuse me, good sir. Could you please tell me what your healthcare rates
What are
are?
your healthcare rates? And then he walks out and he's like, obvious fraud. They will not engage.
It's so good.
And then the whole country's like, yep, fraud. Send in the feds.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's where we live. That's cool.
Well, on that note, folks, that is where we live this week. We'll see where we live next week.
Who's a better journalist, Dokoupil or Nick Shirley?
Oh, it's Dokoupil all day. Oh, well, it's tough because they kind of, it's like Nick Shirley's the hammer. He's on the streets, and Dokoupil's the brain, the mind.
I mean, if you want a serious answer, you have to go with Dokoupil, because at least he did get that answer out of Tom Homan. You know, like that was a real thing he produced, as opposed to like a bunch of fabricated slopaganda bullshit from Nick Shirley.
The chance that Shirley is in talks with 60 Minutes right now, probably pretty high.
Pretty high.
Imagine Shirley on a teleprompter. That would just be unbelievable. That'd be like something you play at Guantanamo. All right. So Friday show ending now. Thank you to the candidates that joined us this morning. And anything else before we leave, y'all?
Don't think so. Appreciate you guys. If anything crazy happens over the weekend, we'll try to cover it. Otherwise, actually, Ryan, isn't it you and me on Monday?
That's right.
We doing a commie takeover?
We're going to have
with
Chris
a special
Van Hollen
guest
in studio.
That's right. Super psyched about that. We'll have to brainstorm questions for him. So if you guys have thoughts, send them our way. We'll take a look at that as well. But definitely want to talk to him about Venezuela for sure, potential shutdown, ICE, many things to get into with him.
Yes, indeed.
All right. We'll see y'all then. Bye-bye.